everybody, Peter here from the Esoteric Order of Gamers. How are you? Hope you're enjoying your gaming, life's good, and I'm going to tell you more today about Tamashii, Chronicle of Ascend by Awaken Realm Lite. Now, I've done already an overview of this game. Go and check it out because I go into the rules and give you, a good general overview of what it's about. So I'm not going to go into the rules again here because I gave a pretty good idea of how you play it in that video. Today, I want to talk about my own personal opinion because I've gone back since that video and played it a few times since, and I want to tell you what I think of it. In that first video, I'd just done the prologue and just as a solo game, just to get into the idea of how it plays. I've played with two players now a few times, and I want to tell you about it because I think it's pretty cool. Now, before I get started, I want to reiterate, as I always do, that I get these for free. So Awaken Realm Lite were very kind and sent me a copy of this game to review. I don't charge for these videos and my opinions are always my own. So with that said, let's get into Tamashii, Chronicle of Ascend. Now, as I said in the last video, it's a cyberpunk game set in a kind of Japanese-themed cyberpunk world. You are characters that are trying to sort of fulfill different missions. There's an overarching nasty AI called Ascend, which is trying to get you, and the minions of Ascend, the enemies, are kind of latch onto you as you try and do your various missions. Now, the missions are all controlled by scenario cards. So every time you choose a scenario, you get two things. You get a little pamphlet like this, which has the rules for setup and the special rules of the scenario, and you get a set of scenario cards that you'll work through as you play the scenario. Now, straight off the bat, oh, this is good. I don't have to tell you the rules. I can just tell you what I think about stuff straight away. That's good. I might do this from now on. I might actually, when I get new games, I might divide them into sort of rules and overview and unboxing type video, and then a separate review video after I played it. Let me know what you think of that idea. Or I could wait and do it all in one go, but this way I get some information out to you really quickly, and then later on I can do the review. Yeah, if you like that idea, let me know. Anyway, one of the things I love about this game is that all the scenarios are separate. Now, you don't actually keep track of your character development, everything between scenarios. Now, we all love doing scenario games, I know, and they're extremely popular, but I really, really, really like this idea of just being able to pop in, play any one of these scenarios and get into the game straight away, and you don't have to keep track of stuff between scenarios and the development of your character. It's fantastic because you can pick up and play. It's great. You're not sitting down with your friends and saying, we're going to play this game for the next X number of months and we can't play anything else because, we have to keep track of it and go all the way through. And I've found that Awaken Realms games in the past have tended to be like that. I just haven't been able to devote the amount of time that I would have liked to playing them. This one, because it's from the side of the company called Awaken Realms Lite, L-I-T-E, which I have a personal bugbear about, but anyway, Lite. They're making these games which are supposedly lighter. This is still a full-on game. I mean, there's a lot of info here. There's as much info and complexity as your average game. So it's not a light game by any means, I don't think. Though I did go to their website and I noticed they are planning much lighter games, which sort of seem to go more with the idea of it being, Awaken Realms Lite. This one I think they could have happily released under the main Awaken Realms banner and no one would have known the difference. Anyway, the good thing about it, from my point of view, is that you can just drop in and grab one of these scenarios and play it. Now, the only thing about that is that there is a final scenario which you can't play until you've played all the other ones. So that's a nice little capper. When you've done all the other scenarios, you can say, and you've got to do them all successfully, once they're all done, you get a reward of doing the sort of big final scenario at the end. Also, after you've done that, there's extra stuff. There's a thing called the Lost Pages, which is some extra scenarios. There's, some extra stuff here, which introduces a single scenario, this one with a special character. And you've got Forbidden Chapter here, which is an expansion. This has got a mini campaign of 4 scenarios in it, and some extra miniatures and things as well. So there's heaps of content. I mean, this will keep you busy for a long time. Each game is, relatively long, but it does say on the little scenario sheet, It gives you an idea of the difficulty, easy, medium and hard, and it's also got length as well, so, short, medium, long, which is, great, because you can say, okay, I've got a certain amount of time, I want to play a game of Tamashii, how much time have we got? Do we really want to get into it, or do we want a quicker game? But, even the sort of easy to medium games are relatively long, so it's not a super short game by any means. Anyway, so just that's number one. I really like this system. And I've just got to say, in general, I love the games by Awaken Realms, because they do what I wanted games to do when I was young, and as I played them, they immerse me. I get really immersed in the background, all the lovely bits, the production. It's great. To me, that's what gaming is all about. It's really exciting, and it sparks my imagination, and I go straight back to being 12 again. That's what I love. So I do really like that. The flip side of that is that they tend to be quite complex, and there's a certain amount of checklisty about them. They tend to have, long turn and phase sequences, especially with old ISS Vanguard here, which I mentioned a few times, wasn't for me because of the time investment you had to put into playing it. But also there was the fact that you really had to follow the checklist. I mean, you couldn't sort of get the turn order in your head and just play without putting the rules aside. You're always checking what's the next thing to do, especially during the phase where you go back to the spaceship in that game. I mean, you really just you're going through lists and lists of saying, I can do this, do this, do this. It's virtually impossible to remember at all. The good thing about this one, of course, is that you can get the turn sequence in your head and play and be immersed. So you're not constantly referring to things. That's another really good point about this game, I find. Now, of course, it does come with some really nice reference cards, which are over here. Let me see. Yeah, there's 3 of those. Like all reference cards, they're double-sided, which always, I find frustrating during the game, because you're looking at it, flip it over, blah, blah, blah. So, of course, I've done a rules and reference for you. This is the reference card, so everything that is on those cards is on this single sheet. So you can just keep this beside you and refer to things, see your basic patterns and what they do, and the basic idea of the turn sequence and everything. So it's very handy. And of course, I've got a rules reference as well, which is pretty much the whole book on just 2 sides of a sheet of paper. And then there's an extra one for keywords, solo play, and the scenario generator. So you won't need that too much, because you'll get used to what the keywords are and everything. So all your rules are on that, which is better than a whole rule book, isn't it? Big floppy square rule book with pages and pages. I think you'll find this very handy. Where do you get it? The usual place, of course. You go to orderofgamers.com, which is my website for the Esoteric Order of Gamers. You can download it for free. I suggest printing it out, laminating it, trimming it, and sticking it in your box. So my main point from all that was it's very easy to remember the turn sequence after a few turns, and you don't have that usual thing of Awaken Realms where you're following long lists of what you do and all the steps you go through. So another thing that I love about this game. So the main mechanic in this game is the programming and launching of patterns, which I talked about in the overview. And at the time I thought, is this going to get sort of a bit, tedious? Because every turn you're getting into your little bag here and you're drawing out counters and you're putting them on your highlighted spaces like so. And then you get a turn to program them, which means you can move them around, shift them and swap them with other ones. So you get launch patterns. Now there are basic launch patterns. 3 in a row give you an asset of the type that you are putting 3 in a row. Now assets, as I said before, very handy. You get a memory asset, which allows you to get rid of tokens, buy new tokens, and get class augment cards, which are special abilities for your class that you start the game with. You've also got shields. Shields are good for blocking damage when enemies attack you. You've got reroll tokens, reroll assets, which allow you to reroll dice, which is always handy, of course. And then you've got power, and that allows you to get extra dice when you're attacking enemies. So, very important to launch these basic patterns. If you manage to get 5 in a row, you can get 2 of that type of asset. So you're doing that all the time, but you're also launching patterns for other things, and that is to attack enemies which have attached to you. Now, when you get an enemy, they may have patterns on here that you can launch to hack or repel them. Now, the hack usually does some damage to them or does something special to them. And the repel one allows you to say, "Get thee behind me, Satan. Get away from me." You get rid of the enemy. Unfortunately, you don't get any experience for it, but it can be really handy when you're being absolutely swarmed by enemies to just repel them like that. The other disadvantage of repelling an enemy is that you usually get some corrupted tokens. Now, at the start of the game, there's a certain number of corrupt tokens placed on your time track here, and that's all you get. So you can't use them too many times. You'll also be using corrupt tokens or corruption tokens when you reset. So basically when you die and you reset into a new body. So you've got to be careful because they're a finite resource. So you can't repel enemies too many times, and obviously you can't die and reset too many times. You can also use patterns to launch faction augment cards, which give you special abilities and special stuff, which is really fun. So yes, I love the programming thing, and it turns out that it's a lot of fun and it's just a great idea. And the reason is because there are so many interesting choices. You've got a certain number of tokens. You can arrange them in different patterns. You've got to work out whether you get some assets, whether you launch an attack on some of the enemies that are attached to your player board, whether you use a faction augment card to give you a special ability. And you've got to weigh up these choices and decide which one you're going to go for. And it can be really frustrating also sometimes when, you're really close to getting that pattern, but you haven't quite got it. It's really interesting. The other thing you can use patterns, by the way, is to buy yourself new bodies. There's a body market of cards, and if you get the right pattern, you can get one of these, and these will up your abilities and make you a lot stronger. Talking about bodies, and I'm all over the shop in this review here, but I'm just giving you my thoughts as they come to me. Bodies are basically the whole reason you've got all this collection of miniatures here. So these are all the different bodies. There's a couple of sort of boss enemy figures here as well, but mostly these are the different bodies. So when you get one of these new body cards, you launch a pattern and you get the new body and you put it on your player board, you get to swap your miniature on the board with your new body. So it's very self-indulgent. You can see I'm like halfway through painting these. I'm busy painting these at the moment. So a lot of work painting and everything for something which is very cosmetic. And that's a slight disadvantage. And it's a slight disadvantage to, or a slight negative to a lot of Awaken Realms games. I always find that, they make nice miniatures. They're not fantastic. I think they lack a little bit of character because they're very much sort of normal human scale. There's nothing sort of heroic or exaggerated or kind of interesting about the miniatures. I know people rave about some of the Awaken Realms miniatures, but I like miniatures with a bit more character. I think it's the difference between the old sort of Disney cartoons and anime to me. Oh, I'm making some big calls here, aren't I? The exaggeration of movement in a cartoon is what it makes it exciting and dynamic. When it's more sort of straight and realistic, and I'm not saying anime is realistic, there's lots of exaggerated stuff, of course, but that kind of more assembly line kind of animation, it's a bit more dry. And I just feel Awaken Realms miniatures are a little bit on the dry side. But that said, the main problem is that they're not really integral parts of the gameplay. They tend to be markers for where your character is on the map board, and that's about it. And especially in this case, because you don't have enemy miniatures at all, because enemies are represented by these cards which are attached to your player board. So there's really no reason at all to have enemy miniatures. I'm glad they didn't go all out and create all the enemy miniatures, which would just sit on your card and take up space and not do anything at all. I suppose you could put them on the board, but again, not really necessary. So it always looks good when they're painted. You can see that I've painted up some of these miniatures and they look really good sitting on the hexes and moving from hex to hex as you reveal the districts and everything. But they're totally unnecessary. You could use a meeple, you could use any kind of marker really to show where you are. So that's a bit of a con, I guess. But it's a common thing, as I said, with Awaken Realms games. And the good thing about this is that you do get a choice because there is a set of this game with just standees. And I really think standees would be fine. Unless you're really keen to have some cyberpunk miniatures, and you might be because you might be playing some other game like, I don't know, Core Space or some cyberpunk game that needs miniatures. Might be great to get a tray full of these weird cyberpunk miniatures. But otherwise, they're really not necessary to gameplay. Now, the scenarios themselves so far have been really interesting. There's all kinds of things happening. It's usually, you're being sent to various parts of the board, and you're trying to find things or pick up and deliver stuff and things like that. But the scenarios are quite immersive. I like them. I like the way that they give a sort of general idea of a story, but because you can do them in any order, it's not a linear story. It just gives you a feeling of things going on. And I find them quite immersive and enjoyable. I think it's a good aspect of the game. The difficulty level seems about right. At first I thought it was a little bit hard, but then we won one and I thought, oh yeah, that's good. So that seems about right so far. Though I must admit we've only got up to medium level difficulty, so the hard ones might be a lot harder. And you've got to remember there is a lot of luck involved in this game, which is absolutely fine by me, but it's an integral part of the game because you never know what you're going to draw from your bag, though you can adjust the contents of your bag to try and adjust the probabilities. That's really important. And most importantly, these enemy cards will come out. Now, these come out when your trace level gets higher and you roll dice. So when you roll dice, you might get blanks and not get any enemies at all, not even blanks. There's 2 icons here, you might not get any enemies. And if that happens at just the right time, it's phew, I didn't get any more enemies because, you can get a bit of a line up of them here. And especially if they get tougher, it can be, quite daunting when you get to the combat phase and they can do a lot of damage to you and kill you quite quickly. The good news is, of course, if you die in this game, you can reset really quite easily. The only problem is, as I said, you'll run out of corruption tokens if you do it too much. Of course, production-wise, the whole game is beautiful. It looks spectacular. It's got the classic cyberpunk colours of purples and light blues, cyan and things like that that really make it feel bright and neon. It's like, the Osaka night. The bags, not too crazy about it. They've got strings on them that close them, but they just kind of get in the way when you're reaching for your data tokens. And also, let's face it, they kind of look like a sort of 12-year-old's bedspread, don't they? I mean, this shiny material and the graphics, they're a little bit tacky, but they're bright, and they do the job. I really love the insert. Now, there's been a lot of people going on and on about the insert. I don't know why. There's a couple of problems with it. There's one of the divider cards stands up too high and gets crushed if you put the top in. That's a bit of a mistake, but chop the bottom off it a little bit or turn it sideways. Problem solved. If you're sleeving all the cards, you're going to have a problem because there really isn't enough room to sleeve all the cards. But it's not necessary. The only cards that I've sleeved are the enemy cards because you're shuffling the different types of enemies, so you're going to be shuffling those a lot. I've also sleeved the body cards just because that's a small deck you'll shuffle at the start of the game. But everything else that's unnecessary, these scenario cards, you're just going through them in order, so there's no real reason to sleeve those at all. So you don't need much sleeving at all, and you can fit it all back in the box if you just sleeve those ones. I found it all fits nicely. What I absolutely love are these trays. Look at these, they're so nice. You've got one here for your big counters. There's another small one here for your plastic counters. While I'm here, lovely plastic counters, little ones for experience and damage, little plastic counters. These are beautiful. They also have little lids that go on top of them for storage. I mean, look at that. If only all games did that. It's just beautiful. And not only that, they're great. They've got curved bottoms to them, so you can slide out counters really easy. They don't get stuck in the corners, which is really nice. So, production-wise, it's absolutely gorgeous and looks fantastic on the table. So really, I have nothing bad to say about Tamashii Chronicle of Ascend. I think it's one of the best things that Awaken Realms has done. I mean, they've done more complex, more involved, longer games. But to me, this is the sweet spot. They've just hit the sweet spot here. It's got enough story and enough difference in scenarios to make it compelling and immersive, which is great. The rules have just enough crunch to make them interesting. I love the fact that you've got constant choices about which programs to launch and where you're going to put your resources, and if you're going to get more of these assets or if you're going to spend your resources killing enemies. But remember, while all this is going on, you're also trying to fulfill the scenarios as well. And of course, on the scenario cards, on the back of them, you'll have a world activity step and a player activity step. So there's a time track on here. So there's always a time pressure, a feeling that you've got to achieve these goals. before you get too swarmed by enemies. The enemies are like a thing that you always have to kind of maintain. And when you get to the combat step, it's not like, oh God, we've got to go through the combat step again. It's easy. You roll a couple of dice, you do your effects, they do their effects. Bang, it's over. It's fast and fun and can be have those moments where you go, oh no, and all those moments where you say, oh, I've just got to roll a thing, and you know, those kind of classic combat phase kind of moments, which is really nice. So I just think it hits this balance. It's really nice, and I really hope they make more games of this type. I suspect that the huge games with the gazillions of miniatures and the long campaigns bring in more punters because there's more sort of perceived value there. But the funny thing is that I'll probably end up playing Tamashii a lot more than I'll play Tainted Grail or RSS Vanguard or Etherfields or any of those other games. Because even though they're great, I just don't have the time to just sort of go through the whole campaign and play it successively for a long time and keep track of my character between. There's a lot of overhead with those games. They're very cool, but there's a lot of overhead. And I really, admire the people who have the time to really get into them and enjoy all that those games have to offer. But this one is just bang on the money for me. I can go back into it and enjoy it and not have that big brain drain that the other ones have, and get a real good dose of cyberpunk story and some nice decision making and a laugh and some good dice rolling moments and everything. Well done, Awaken Realms. I think this is a absolute winner. And if you're at all into cyberpunk, you don't mind a bit of luck, and you want a little bit of story, but not too much, and a feel of a campaign without all the bookkeeping overhead of a campaign, this is the game for you. Tamashii, Chronicle of Ascend. I hope you've enjoyed this. Don't forget to check out my other video on the rules if you want more detail on that. These are just my thoughts on playing it a few times and really getting into it. It's a great game. Thank you very much for watching, everybody. I'm Peter, also known as Universal Head. This is the Esoteric Order of Gamers. And don't forget to go into the website at orderofgamers.com because there are 450 or so of these rules and references for lots of popular games. There's also over 500 videos for you to explore. Everything is easily searchable on the website. So don't just watch the latest stuff. Go back and check some of the older videos and games out. There's heaps and heaps there, and there's mini reviews on every game as well when you download the rules and reference. So much to enjoy. Also, I'm on all of the social media channels. I won't bother listing them all. There are so many these days. And follow whichever one you like to use, and you'll find also updates from me with photos of game sessions and thoughts on the game industry in general and all the rest of it. I will see you next time. Good gaming, everybody. Bye for now.